Hello and welcome to a new episode of Talking Snooker with Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf. Once again, talking about the game we all love.
Yeah, hello everybody. Good evening. We're recording this in the evening. Of course, it might not be the evening where you are, but we've had a lot of snooker to watch, lots going on. It feels like a while since we've been speaking to you, actually. So let's crack on with it.
Yes, it's been a couple of weeks. I've been away on my holidays. You can blame me for that, but we're back. And Phil, it's Neil Robertson doing a lot of celebrating, I can imagine, right now, because he was the last man standing at snooker's new big money ranking tournament in Saudi Arabia, beating Ronnie O'Sullivan 10-9 in the final. Brilliant effort from Robertson. Hard to believe, Phil, that it's just 16 months ago that he failed to qualify for the World Championship at the Crucible. He could have gone into his shell then. Unlikely because of the character we know, but he didn't retreat at all, did he? He vowed to be back, and boy, has he been true to his word. English Open and World Grand Prix winner last season. Now this third tournament success in less than a year. He's back up to number 3 in the world rankings. It's obviously great for Robertson, but I'm also saying it's great for the sport too, because frankly, at the age of 43, he's still got so much more to give.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. I don't think anyone really thought he was done at all. But if you go through these lean spells, I suppose after the age of 40, even when the snooker landscape has changed in recent years and people are going on a lot longer, I suppose past the age of 40, there can be concerns over what's a dip and what's a complete decline. But it didn't seem likely that he was on the way out there at all. And he's not in any stretch. Like you said, there's three tournament wins, and this one bigger than the other two. Not just the prize money, what it means for his rankings, but beating Ronnie in the final. Obviously, that English beat Wu, who great player, but first ranking final, and then Stewart, obviously a great player in the Grand Prix, but it was extremely one-sided as you can get in a final. But to beat Ronnie 10-9 with so much on the line, he's as back as he's ever been. I don't know how far he ever went away, really, but he's all the way back now.
He really is, certainly. And well, the final was all one-way traffic at one stage. Terrific. I just said then, yeah, a bit of Fools and Horses, terrific. It was actually traffic I'm looking for. At one stage, Phil Robertson 6-2 up after the first session. And then when in the next frame, when they resumed to go 7-2 ahead, breaks of 76, 108, 81, 61 and 97. And then O'Sullivan, who we have to come to his incredible semi-final a bit later, which we will do. But then he produced a burst of his trademark excellence at that stage. It went from 7-2 to 7-7 in no time, really. Breaks of 139, 97, 89, 57, and 80 from Ronnie. Then it was Robertson going 8-7 ahead with a 75, so he sort of stopped the rot then. O'Sullivan took the next two for a 9-8 lead, but Robertson dug the deepest, a break of 101 to force a decider. And then Ronnie sort of had the early advantage in that decider, but Robertson took it with an 87. It was thrilling stuff, no question about it. Brilliant, brilliant final. Robertson said it was his best ever win. Now, my initial comments and reaction on Saturday night was maybe not the most helpful of comments, but he's entitled to say it. He's the one that's winning these stuff. We're just mere bystanders. And he has, to be fair, explained quite a bit more to you and to others, hasn't he, about those comments? And, when you consider, I don't think he's saying it's the most important, by the way. He's saying it's the best. There might be a difference there. But he's saying, if you consider how far he'd fallen and the man he just beat, you can sort of add it all together and see why it means quite so much to him, eh?
Yeah, definitely. And it's how you feel in the moment, or even a few moments later. I don't know what he's thinking now. I spoke to him on Zoom afterwards, which was only a few minutes after, and he was still saying that and explaining that. I think John Higgins said it at the Tour Championship last season when he beat Mark Selby in that great final. I'm sure he said that was his best ever win. And, you know, it depends, is it the one that means the most, or does it one just because of what he's been through and come back and the age they are and who they're playing? There's all sorts going into it. So yeah, I mean, obviously most people's reaction is like, well, it's not bigger than a world championship. And I don't know if he's saying it is bigger. It's probably just the whole context of the low that he hit, the fact it's Ronnie, the money on the line as well, obviously is part of it. Um, but yeah, it's just one of those things, isn't it? It was quite sort of eyebrow raising to hear him say that above a world championship, but if that's what he feels, then that's what he feels. You know, a lot of people sort of saw, and you shouldn't just react to everything you see on social media, but saying, "Oh, he's been told to say that, he's been paid to say that." He hasn't. Like that is just what he felt at the time. And you know, like you said, if fair enough, he's entitled to feel how he feels. You know, in 10, 20 years' time, when he looks back on his career, maybe it will be the world championship that was the biggest and the best. But you don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, quite a few people have said, well, if you sat Neil down in a room, in the same way if you sat John Higgins down in a room, you know, after those comments, as you rightly reminded me of, in reminding our listeners as well of what he said in Manchester in the spring, if you sat them both down and said, well, you can take something away from your CV, they're taking the Tour Championship and the Saudi event away. They're leaving the World Championship. And I think that ultimately says it all. You know, their most significant successes surely have to have come in Sheffield. But that doesn't mean there isn't nuance. And I think, to be fair, a lot of us did lightly not challenge what John thinks in his head, but lightly challenge the immediacy of what John said in that occasion. In fairness, it's not like we're picking on Neil for this. You know, it's almost like um, these. And they are similar, aren't they? Because they're similar sort of style. I mean, John's won an awful lot more, and he's that bit older, but it's a similar sort of scenario. Both beating great players in brilliant finals, and you know, Higgins in the case of, I mean, he just won one, but you know, he didn't think he might be able to win that big again. Maybe Neil thought he might never win this big again, and it wouldn't have been an absolutely unbelievable surprise if Neil hadn't won a very top level one again. So there's all sorts of nuance and you know going on here. But listen, you know that it's a marvelous win. Let's just say that. And Phil, maybe there's loads to talk about actually. Yeah, this is going to be a big episode of Talking Snooker. We've got loads to catch up on the Saudi and everything else, but must maybe talk more about the absolute glory of Ronnie and what happened in that semi later. But just a general word on Ronnie, he's right back, isn't he? I mean, I'm no therapist, you know that. I'm a journalist, but I think he, you know, that man's so much more settled. Whether it's getting married, whether it's taking that time off, whatever it is, it's great to see. I'm not saying it will last forever or even for half a year or a year. Ronnie's a transient person in life. But right now, he seems in a good place. And again, I say it's good for snooker with Robertson. It's good for snooker with Ronnie. You know, he played pretty well in Shanghai. He played very well here. Any suggestions are wise at the start of the year? Are we ever going to see Ronnie, you know, fight for these big titles again? Those concerns are over.
Yeah, it certainly seems like that. He's not relentlessly consistent yet, but has he ever been really? Stringing, especially when his highs are so high, like the semi-final, it's impossible to be consistent if they're the heights you set as your best. Because he could have easily lost to Shambing Yu. You know, he was 5-2 down there.
Yeah.
He was very nearly out. Um, but he's getting back. He's certainly getting back to his best, and obviously the semi-final was his best, and the final showed what you say so often, how much of a scrapper and a fighter he is, and that goes under the radar a bit. But he showed it all there, and that was brilliant. Um, I suppose it's just that his scrapping and fighting is still a lot prettier than most other people's scrapping and fighting. Like he just digs in what could be what looked like a hopeless situation and reels off loads of good breaks. But it took some mental strength to do that for sure. And I think that's what's the encouraging thing for Ronnie fans. He's clearly trying really hard to win, and he wants to be there. He's competing hard, and you know he's obviously so good. If he keeps going into matches with that attitude, occasionally his very best will turn up, and that's exactly what he did against Chris Wakelin. You know, he said that's the best he's ever played, which considering what he's done in the game and the age he is, it's remarkable that is possible that he can now do the best he's ever played. But he did it. We should never be too surprised by what he's doing.
Yeah, I can't wait for us to get there and talk about that more because that was a quite extraordinary snooker match and a quite extraordinary snooker night actually. Well, there's loads to talk about from the opening days before the last 16 got involved. I know you'll have your say, you know, perhaps more extensively, but I just want to pick out a few headlines. Well, Luca Bassel pulling out and saying he's struggling with health problems. We wish Luca all the best. Snooker's much better with him around and playing in events. We hope to see him back soon. Well, Rhian Evans, what a smashing start to the season. That's continuing. She beat Krejci Gerbuksani 4-2 and Liam Davis 4-2 before losing to Jack Lisowski. Tetrayo Anu made a 147 over Jordan Brown in that match. I mean, they're easy 147s. They're not hard to make. They're pretty easy. But it's still nice when people get them, isn't it? It's a nice
Yeah.
moment. Louis Heathcote kept winning 4-0, Phil. You know
Oh,
all about 4-0 wins for the Tony Meo Trophy. He had a run of them, kept getting them. Brilliant effort. Lan Yu Hao, 16 years old, won 3 matches, including beating Liu Haoshan 4-0. That was an eye-opener. He only just lost 5-4, actually, against Elliot Slesser, who's one of the men of the tournament. We'll come to Elliot in time, of course. Mikhail Shabazik, even younger, only 14. He beat Ryan Davis and Bultsu Revez. And we got to say about Stephen Hallworth and have our own special section maybe here or period to talk about Stephen. I mean, he just performed superbly, didn't he? He's saying he is first and foremost a snooker player. We know from broadcasting now. But of course, he showed that, and with knobs on. Victories over Omar Alajanli, Michael Holt, Jimmy Robertson, and Zhao Yulong. Great run for him. And generally, Phil, there's so much for you to reflect on. It was a mad old few days, wasn't it, to kick off the tournament?
yeah, no, that's one of the better things about this tournament, really, that the whole tour is there, plus some extras. It's 144 players in that first round. You get to see some players playing you know, in a big tournament. I'm sure we'll get to the atmosphere. It didn't seem like a good atmosphere, a big atmosphere, but a big tournament for sure on the telly. And we get to see some players we don't see too often. And yeah, Holworth, great run. I mean, I was watching that match against Holt, and he went 2-0 down, and he was struggling early. And I thought, oh, he's not going to last long here. But good fighting, and I mean that's 3 great wins to beat Holt, Jimmy Robertson, and Zhou Yulong. Very impressive. And then I've heard him speak about the match against Xing Tong after that. And it was just one of those that he didn't feel too bad about. He just got to watch an absurdly good performance from Xiao Xing Tong in that
Yeah,
round,
yeah,
and just had to sort of take the pleasure out of it. But no, great run from Stephen. I think that's his highest ever win, 20 grand. So good stuff. And you mentioned Heathcote there. Yeah, good season so far for him. And he only lost out 5-4 to Boyko. And I think you mentioned a couple of them there, and that was that was the standout thing for me of the early rounds was the youngsters doing well. Sabashenko only 14, winning 2 games. Lanyahao winning 3 games, and then that decider. Moody won a couple of games. He's still only 18. Boyko still only 19. It feels like he has been around forever because I think he was on tour at 14 or 15. I think 50 maybe. But he won 4 games, beat Heathcote in that decider, and then only lost a decider to Kyron. And he really should have won that. And Wu Yizer even, I mean, we're so used to him sort of going pretty deep now. He's still only 21 and he won a couple of games. So, yeah, really encouraging stuff from the young guys and the extremely young guys. Winning 2 games in a ranking event at 14 is absurd, really, isn't it?
yeah. It's
And
mad.
yeah, I had Rianne written down as well. But I mean, what a great start to the season. I've not actually looked this up, but she must have comfortably won more games this year already than she did over the last season. So really pleased for her because I know she's struggled with um, a few injuries actually, and just showing her best. I think of the women on tour, she hasn't been able to fully show her highest level so far. So I'm pleased for her to be getting some results now. And yeah, I think there were 4 players that got through from round one into the last 32, where the big boys joined the fray. So that was Boyko and Hallworth, and Farah Ajaib did very well, and Chang Bing Yu, who's made a storming return to
Mm.
tour since coming back from his ban. Not he's not won a world championship, but it's Zhao Xintong-esque in terms of just clearly that time away has not held him back. If anything, he's a much better player than he was then. So he's lurking down the rankings at the minute, but he's a much better player than his world ranking suggests, and is very threatening in the draw as he showed by beating Mark Allen and very nearly beating Ronnie O'Sullivan.
Absolutely, yeah. Quite right. Well teed up. Jan Bing you back on tour after his ban for match fixing. And yeah, just looking the part on the table, really. I mean, he beat Mark Allen 5-4. That's an absolutely cracking win for him in the last 32. And what a cracking win for Ollie Lyons, Phil, beating Judd Trump 5-3. Trump was the defending champion, of course. Lyons sent him packing with 2 centuries and 2 half centuries. And when you mentioned Julian Boyko, I mean, he would have been gutted after that match against Kyron, no question. 4-2 up. Wilson came back, a proper scrapper. We know Kyron. He came back for a 5-4 win. A cracking win for Elliot Slesser, 5-4 over John Higgins. And then you mentioned Zhao Xintong. Yeah, he was absolutely, spellbinding, really, in beat Stephen Hallworth 5-0. And Ronnie O'Sullivan also had a 5-0 win against Joe O'Connor. Probably expected Joe to perform a little bit better in that match, but it didn't happen. Ronnie won comfortably. Last 16, then, as is traditional, we tend to run through the results. Mark Williams, 6, Sean Murphy, 1. Ali Carter, 6, Ollie Lyons, 3. Elliot Slessor, 6, Stuart Bingham, 5. Neil Robertson, 6, Mark Selby, 4. Selby making his 900th career century in that match. Kyron Wilson, 6, Cedroy Heath, 3. Ronnie O'Sullivan, 6, Chan Bing Yu, 5. And that was, Ronnie looked pretty much down and out, 5-2 down, came back to win it. 1 century on the way to levelling, and then a 1-2-5 in the decider. So he certainly had his scoring boots on when it really mattered. Really good match, obviously, Barry Hawkins and Dean Junhui. Barry winning it 6-5. And Chris Wakelin, 6, Xiao Xintong, 5. I mean, so much happened in this tournament. It's almost one of those matches that maybe not getting enough credit, but tremendous victory for Wakelin from 5-3 down. Maybe you could, talk about that. And he's a different character, Wakelin, now, in every single way, even against Ronnie, which we'll come to. We've been training this more than any match we've ever talked about, Phil. But even against Ronnie, not to back down. Ronnie said at 3-3, I'm worried I'm going to bloody lose it. Wakelin, he just looks the part, and he told us on here about his mentality, and it's just different now. He's always had the smarts on the table, but now he's got the absolute top level mentality to go with it. It seems, and isn't it serving him well?
Yeah, he's amazing to listen to how he talks. It's quite inspirational, really. He really puts a pep in your step. And he's backing it up. It's not it's not nonsense.
No.
To beat Zhao Xintong, he lost to him at the Crucible, obviously, and he lost to him in Shanghai. So he was ready to dish out some revenge, and he did that beautifully there from, what was he, 5-3 behind, and he went to win the final 3 frames. Very impressive against, obviously, an incredible player. And just the way the people are talking now, I was listening to the World Snooker Tour podcast today that came out, and Hendry and Barry Hawkins was on, and they were just saying how beautiful his technique is. Wonderful cueist. It's not just sort of this plucky underdog who's scrapping from the lower ranks and he's clawed his way up there. He's just a sensational player, and he's just got the belief now, and he's sort of good in all aspects. So yeah, another great week for him, and his highest financial week prize ever. And it seems like the only way is up for Chris. And most people are sort of expecting him to lift some sort of title this year, and it would be no surprise at all.
Absolutely right, and that's the way he's going. And yeah, there's so much to talk about as we kept going on then through the quarterfinals. Elliot Slessor 6, Mark Williams 5, Neil Robertson 6, Ali Carter 4, and then another match that I absolutely loved watching. I'm sure nearly all snooker fans did. Ronnie O'Sullivan 6, Kyron Wilson 5. We expected it to be good with these two. They met in Shanghai. Kyron got the better of that one, but Ronnie got the better of this one from 5-3 down. He couple of good breaks to get level, and then that scrapping away again, which he did to win the decider. And then Chris Wakelin kept going on, beat Barry Hawkins, who you talking about. So Barry would have seen him at close quarters, of course. Wakelin winning 6-5 in that one to get through to the semi-finals. Well, Elliot Slessor's superb run as another man that looks like tournament success is just around the corner in many ways, but he did lose to Robertson 6-3. And then we're finally there, Phil. Ronnie O'Sullivan 6, Chris Wakelin 3. I mean, if you played the game on a computer game, you'd be saying it looks unrealistic. But in reality, I mean, my goodness. O'Sullivan then with maximum breaks in the first and 7th frames of the match. He also made breaks of 1-4-2 and 1-3-4. They were his first maximums for 7 years, and I didn't half believe it had been that long. He went from 15 to 17 in 2 hours. He picked up the 147,000 bonus for making 2 maximums in the majors. I don't think WSG expected that to go in both the first 2 seasons. So not this quickly, crazy. Just a next level performer. It was the stuff of genius. It was that next level thing which I love with Ronnie, as we all do with the likes of Messi and Federer. I've written about it in a column I wrote for Sporting Life. He's up there with that sort of thing, and I noticed you noticed this as well and noted this. For me, one of the few British sports people who could take attention away from a Premier League match. Liverpool v Bournemouth in the opening match of the season. And frankly, football got a lot of attention, of course, still on Friday night, but so did Ronnie. That's how special that guy is. That was some night, wasn't it? I mean, I have to say, I sent you a bit of an expletive because work was a bit of a hairy ride to say the least. What a night on the old keyboard, Phil. I think I bashed it so much. I think it's probably ruined. Certainly on fire. Big night in the workplace, but Ronnie had a good night in the workplace for sure. That was exhilarating, wasn't it?
Yeah, Carnage. I was working as well. I was the only one on, so pretty split loyalties between trying to because that Liverpool game was a cracker as well.
It
So
was.
yeah, there was plenty to do, but I enjoyed doing it. Because yeah, it was just silly. Yeah, to make a 147 with his first visit to the table, wasn't it? I think he just started off with that, didn't he?
Yeah.
And then followed it with so much more. And when he's got on that second 147, I was thinking, obviously it was on, but I think the last red was absolutely brilliant. But I was just thinking he can't be doing it again, and of course he can. And he just sort of laughed, didn't he? And he got up to shake Chris's hand at the end of the second one. He was just sort of giggling away.
By the way, he
Um,
had a few balls in the next one or the one after, because I remember
yeah,
it on the
yeah,
Slack on our group message Slack at work. I'm not sure he got that far, but he was possibly on for third. It was just bonkers,
yeah,
bonkers. Go on.
yeah. It's silly. I mean, even the other breaks, he got 134, 142. They're not completely rare, especially in the 130s, but they're just pale insignificance in this, but they're still unbelievable stuff. And yeah, I mean, Chris deserves great credit to be at 3-3 after those first two frames. Ronnie was very complimentary about Chris actually afterwards. But yeah, it was just the kind of performance we may well have never seen before and not see it again. It's incredible that Jackson Page had done the 1-2 for 147s so recently, but that wasn't even on a streaming table. I think we saw some clips afterwards from the streams that go to China, but we couldn't watch it. And it was over two sessions, I think, and it
Yeah,
was a very comfortable win in a
and
huge tournament.
they're easy to make. I mean,
Yeah, apparently
we could do
so.
it ourselves, but we're busy with the podcast.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it was just unbelievable. And you can tell when other players start sort of posting on social media, the way they talk about O'Sullivan is just it's otherworldly stuff. And you're right. When that bonus came in for two 147s in over the four majors as it is, I just thought, this is another silly one. Like they've done a few of these bonuses that effectively they're possible, but they seem very unachievable. And I thought this was another one of them. It's like, yeah, it could happen, but it's not gonna. And it's happened twice already, so it could happen again. Ronnie doing it in one match in the first of the four tournaments. He could do it over the Masters and UK and the Worlds again. He could do it twice more.
What
Whack it all
happens
up.
now with the bonus? So what happens
But
now?
they can hand it out three times over a season. So technically, O'Sullivan could win it three times himself.
Oh
I'm not
no.
saying he's going to, but it could happen. And as I said before, don't be surprised by anything he does.
Absolutely. And then Neil Robertson, of course, won the final 10-9 against Ronnie O'Sullivan. I mean, we'll never know for sure. It's not an exact science, but there's a strong chance that even despite the sort of eternal brilliance of Ronnie, that what he did in the semi slightly impacted the first part of the final because it got away from him a bit that afternoon, didn't it? And that ultimately proved the difference, really. I know he came back and ultimately, but Neil getting that lead built the foundation of it. But, just a brilliant, brilliant, final, a big beast, isn't it? And I heard Dave Hendon use that word in commentary, and both finals have been like that, haven't they? And maybe you expect that because you expect the absolute top level superstars to be so hungry, for financial reasons, a lot of it, we know that, but they're just so hungry to do it that, yes, we've had a few unlikely runs and a couple of semi-finalists for guys that haven't done an immense amount of winning in the game. But when it comes to the final, the same Trump and Williams, now Ronnie and Neil, it's the behemoths of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, and I suppose I don't know if this is part of it, but the money on the line in this event, it's so much. It still does mean stuff to the very richest in the game, but not as much. The difference between the semi and the final is not going to completely change the life of Ronnie O'Sullivan and Neil Robertson, but it may well have changed the life of Slessor and Wakelin, certainly to a much bigger extent. And that's not why Chris Wakelin lost that game to Ronnie O'Sullivan, to be fair. But Slessor was really gutted with his performance there. It was a huge, huge match for him. Possibly the biggest match of his career. So actually, yeah, it was the biggest match of his career. Um, and it wasn't the biggest match of Neil Robertson's career. And that's just experience, isn't it? That's just
Mm.
growing your standing in the game. Such will get there. He's going in the right direction. I'm sure he'll continue to do so, and that's good experience. You've just got to build it up. But yeah, I suppose that's why we've had four of the greatest ever compete in the two finals in Saudi.
Absolutely, and maybe we'll reflect on more matters that Saudi, shall we? Maybe thinking more about sort of off the table matters when we first give a name check and say you are listening here to the Talking Snooker podcast with Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf. Well, the brilliance of the top stars is never in doubt, Phil. They produced the goods in Saudi Arabia in a big way. Neil Robertson winning the title. Congratulations to him with a 10-9 victory in the final over Ronnie O'Sullivan. I mean, in general terms, maybe to focus something a bit more positive first. I thought that was a bit of toning down of the hyperbole again. And funny enough, I started appreciating the arena a bit more because of that. Maybe less is more sometimes. And that was something. I know you've written your own analysis, which I must point people towards. You've detailed that players are, reveling in not just the finances, but being so well looked after at the event. And I've often said on here that I'm not particularly comfortable with it. For large reasons on moral grounds. And I would point people the way as well of Kati Hartinger, who joined me on Radio Snooker. That broadcast is available now. She's from the Total Clearance podcast. And I thought she expressed the position pretty well, really. And she was saying there's not always been, maybe a great amount of compassion shown over the staging of these events. Alongside the disappearance of events in mainland Europe, it feels a little bit like, sort of charging into Saudi Arabia and we're going to do this. And I can't pretend I don't feel a bit punch drunk after the events. But look, I'll pass over to you now. Not too much of my voice. There are still things that I'm not particularly over enamoured with. But listen, the stars delivered. And I don't like going that big on crowds because I think it distracts from other more pressing issues. But clearly the arena was deserted for a large part of the tournament, Phil, more than half. And often there wasn't a single person watching the matches. There was some more later on. Of course there was. But can that be the best look for the sport? I mean, there are times when the greatest one in the world, even if you're watching on TV, we're not in Saudi Arabia, but we don't need to be to see there's no one there at all. It can't add to the spectacle, can it?
No, obviously not. Yeah, I know what you mean. The crowds. I mean, I've written about the crowds, and it is a thing because it does look bad on the telly. You're showing a tournament which you're promoting as one of the biggest in the game, and it is one of the biggest in the game. It's not that is marketing, but the financial side of it makes it one of the biggest in the game, which does. As you said, there's literally no one there. Or sometimes even dafter, there's like two people there, and you can hear like an individual person clapping, which sounds just even sillier. And even the final, I mean, it was obviously in a different venue as last year, it's a different city. But you couldn't fit many in that final. It looked full, but I don't know what the capacity was. I did ask someone at World Snooker, and they didn't tell me. Um, but there weren't many, really, were there? They're quite spaced out seating. It looked very comfortable and nice. They've all got their own little table. But no, I had a mate who's a snooker fan, but not a really hardcore snooker fan. I think he just turned on with the final. And he texted me during it saying the crowd's awful for this. And that was the best crowd of the week. So even when it's as full as it's going to be in there, it's still relatively quiet. But yeah, I mean, as I say, I've written about this, so it is worth talking about. But
Mm,
all that stuff is sort of it's all just irrelevant, really. The whole thing is just sort of a cash grab, isn't it? And
mm.
they've gone there because they can get a load of money out of it, and players can be well paid, and players can be well looked after, and that's just what it is. And I don't blame them for doing it. We've spoken about it here on the moral grounds before,
Mm-mm.
and my position is just, obviously I'm not thrilled about it, but it's so many other sports are doing it. It'd almost be daft of snooker to not just take the money. Um, but I suppose it's all the over the top promotion around it that makes it try and make it look like it's not just a cash grab. And maybe they have to do that just to save face, and that's fine. But all the talk of the fourth major and everyone saying how great it is there, and we can see from here is it just looks the opposite of the stuff, for the viewing public. Um, but yeah, take the money, treat it for what it is. Great. get out of there. But I think that piece that I wrote, the disconnect between the fans, um, and it is, I was sort of comfortable saying the fans because there's so few or no fans there. So when I say the fans, it is just the TV fans because there aren't any there. So yeah, it's all this promotion about how great it is, but from here, it didn't look that great really. But what is always great and why these things work is because the sport is always great.
Mm.
Um, this is what happened in will happen in like the Club World Cup. I heard lots of discussion before the Club World Cup about how bad it is for the scheduling. It shouldn't be happening. Certainly shouldn't be happening in summer in America. They're putting through that heat. And then people start watching the football. It's quite good. And it's like, oh, that is good, actually, isn't it? That's exactly what happens here. Now, snooker was brilliant. And so we'll talk. We spent the first half an hour of this talking about how great snooker was because it is. And that's why, sort of, not getting into this now, but that's why sports watching works because people love sport and will watch sport and be enamored by it anywhere. Um, but that shouldn't entirely distract from the other issues.
Of course, that's why sports washing works. If people say now about Saudi, for a lot of people, they'll say, "Oh yeah, that great snooker happened there, or that great, I watched that big fight there." And they're talking about that rather than some of the sort of much murkier, issues surrounding that country. But I mean, I would say, yeah, they toned down the hyperbole a bit. I did feel like last year there was a bit too much of the. I mean, I said this phrase. I was quite pleased with it. I mean, it's a bit sort of mean in a way, but they were talking about food like it was the elixir of life last year on the event, and there's food here. I'm like, well, it is ultimately just food. But two things: fourth major. I think it is the fourth major, and that's gone down like a lead balloon with a few of my friends. I can tell you, but to me. WSC have branded it the fourth major. It's the fourth major. It's not the event I would have chosen really, if I'm honest. I think it should have been an event in China for the record. But, you know, to go alongside that, they needed to build up the credibility more. And I think that's why it's challenged. And I think that's why it's sometimes mocked. Because, okay, last year was an arena that's not even there anymore. It was temporary. Now it's in Jeddah. Maybe it'll stay there. Probably good if it does, I'd imagine. But, what's the crowd like? There's no one there at all. Nobody. No, not, and not for the first half of the tournament. Oh, okay. And it's a bit smoke and mirrors, really. And people aren't sort of fools, they're not, and you can't take them for fools, really. The other thing I would say is, we do hear quite a lot about growing the game and how it's all about doing that. Well, where are the other tournaments then? If they're growing the game so big, where are the other events so far? There aren't any. And this is the second season of Saudi now, and there's nothing else. So it doesn't feel like you're really growing the game. And if you were very interested in growing the game, what happened to Firth? What happened to Nuremberg and Gibraltar and all these other places that are much less significant places financially, but they were much loved events, some of those, and they're much missed by people. And Carty explains this brilliantly, probably better than I could, I'm sure. She's a professor after all, Phil. She was sort of saying, wearing an economist hat, it's a real thing. Money's a real thing. This is a commercial sport. But I don't know. I sometimes wonder about the balance of that. One thing that came out with my chat with Christian Omiker, by the way, the other presenter from Talking Total Clearance podcast earlier in the year on Radio Snooker, was that the German event earned so little money. I think it ran at a loss the first couple of events. If they'd just taken the money view then, it would have gone. And we'd have lost the temperature and how beloved that is. So quite a bit of waffle there for me, Phil. I'm a world champion when it comes to waffle. But there's a balance, and I'm not convinced we're always taking the right path. And if we're going to keep talking about growing the game, I want to see a bit more evidence with that with my own eyes, not being told things or, read it in a marketing puff. I want to see whether other events to justify the growing the game line, really comes from, eh?
Yeah, and I suppose that's what I was saying before about sort of, is all that sort of talk is mainly just sort of justifying taking all the cash. And again, I don't mind taking all the cash, just take the cash. You don't need to sort of ham it up so much. I suppose, growing the game is not an overnight thing. That will take some time. So I'm sure it will do something. It's not complete nonsense. The fact that this is there, Ronnie's opened his academy there, it will do something. The idea that, we're going to have loads of Saudi professionals on the tour in a few years is probably not going to happen, but you never know. But yeah, I think all that talk of we're here to spread the gospel of snooker, which is a Barry Hearn line. Um, yeah, I mean a little bit, maybe it is a little bit, but it's just more just sort of hamming up the money, isn't it? And I think that's the hamming up and the dressing it up all nice and pretty is what annoys people because we all know it's just about the cash. So yeah, but maybe you don't get the cash if you don't do the hamming up. Maybe you have to call these things the fourth major or whatever, or the offer isn't on the line. So maybe the cash has to come in the nice purse. But I think that's what people get frustrated over. It's all the window dressing. But I sort of agree with you. Well, I'd say I agree with you. I mean, I'm fine with it being the fourth major if someone wants to have a fourth major. I'm not so bothered about majors. I really only think there's one major.
Yeah, I like
Um,
majors more than you.
yeah, I'm
I'm
not
really,
that.
I'm really into majors, me. Um,
Yeah, and it's sort of I see how it works. Like I don't follow golf closely, but I know those big four tournaments and I'm aware of them when they're on. But that also means I could barely name another golf tournament. Like the rest of it just is what is it? I don't know. So the more you sort of ham up the biggest ones, the more there's quite a lot of other tournaments that'll just like fade into nothingness, really. Um, but yeah, not sure what my point was now.
well,
But yeah,
no, Michael
I think it's
McMullen said that
marketing.
once. No, I think Michael McMullen made a very good point once, which what you just said there, that you try and get European tour golf in the papers now. Good luck to you. I mean,
Mm,
you're not getting it, and that is a concern. But I think the funny thing is, to praise snooker for a moment, I think we get that balance brilliantly right. I think, yes, we had the majors, but I think people understand the nuance enough that we have also amazing events like the Champion of Champions. I know some people think, oh, the majors detracts from those. I mean, I don't really. I don't watch the Champion of Champions and think, oh, this is not a major, therefore it's not big. I think it is really big. I think we're great at sort of I think we have a perfect balance of maybe not what no other sport has, but maybe what few have. To the extent that I've had people in the office saying, well, and it's annoyed me. They'll say, well, what's big then? You never seem to differentiate. But I said, well, it's all big. Like the English Open in September is big, really. Yeah, it's not the biggest, but it's a big final. We'll all be gripped by it when it's on that Sunday night. We'll all be gripped by the British. I think we've got it brilliantly in that regard. There's imperfections, of course there is. I'm going off topic a bit, but no. So I'll let you carry on, and maybe we'll wrap up Saudi then. But I also don't. I also don't mind it being the fourth major, but I can see why it's being chided and sometimes mocked by people.
mm.
And that's what gets their goat up because they're just rah rah rah. It's the fourth major. Okay, well now build it up and make it look more credible alongside that, and then we might. Some people probably will never because they don't really believe a new event should be a major and all that. I don't really agree with that, by the way. I think a new event can be a major, but the reason it's getting mocked by people is that it's not appearing to be quite credible enough yet.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And we've got a 10-year deal apparently. So let's just see how it goes. I'm willing for it to. I hope it improves, of course, and I'm not willing it to fail. Um, but yeah, it'd be interesting. And I think that, like you said, the hyperbole. I think the worst one for that was the very first one, the Golden Ball one, where it felt like we were just watching an advert, Saudi Arabia. And that has certainly toned down, and it's much more palatable. Um, and I think I sort of differ with you on the food thing because that was what I was writing in that piece before as well. Just because the snooker players are very easily impressed, but they have been sort of blown away by just being given a couple of meals a day and being given a lift to the venue and stuff. And I do sort of get that because we I think we're always a bit guilty of treating these guys not like normal people who are going to do their job. If I got offered another job and they said, oh, whenever you come in the office, you don't need to get on the tube. We'll come and pick you up in a car and bring you to the office. And don't worry about going and finding lunch. We'll give you that. And there'll be someone to bring you a coffee whenever you want it. If I did that job for a week and someone said, how's the new job? I'd say, oh, that's great. They give me the lift there and they give me the really nice food twice. So I
Mm-hmm.
think we do sort of forget that these guys are just normal people going to work in some in every way. It's a very unique job, but they will be impressed by these perks compared to we've spoken about it on here before compared to literally nothing that they get in a lot of events. They'll be turning up at maybe a venue they've not been to before. sometimes they'll be playing twice in a day, and they've got to go and find, a Nando's wherever they can get out somewhere, Milton Keynes or whatever, and get back as quickly as possible for the next game. It's very different. So I understand how it sounds a bit silly, when players are going, "Oh, it's great, we got a burger." But I can also understand why that seems great compared to what they're used to.
Well explained, and thanks, by the way, for reminding me and maybe others of the Dave Gilbert comments, which I'd half forgotten when he told us about that, asking the
I'd
cleaner.
forgotten where they were from, and I had to trial through quite a lot of stuff, but I did find them.
Oh my God, getting the cleaner to lend him a quid for the machine. I mean, that's bad. The other way. We need in between, really. I mean, some events are a bit in between. That's maybe a bad example. But yeah, one more thing I'd say, I do wish we had a bit more reporting from there. I mean, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I don't really have the means to go. I could make it happen. I don't have an overwhelming desire to do so, but I would like maybe two or three of I say our a bit parochially, but I sort of do mean parochially on this time because I see big picture of a packed press conference there, but I don't know what questions are being asked because I'm not seeing particular evidence of any players or officials certainly being asked many, if any, taxing questions. And I think it's a shame, really. Um, so I'm not saying this is the start of a campaign to get Phil Haig over to Saudi Arabia, but I do think there's an element where I think, of course I'm biased, but I think if maybe a few from our press pack went there, I think I'd feel a bit more comfortable with the coverage, which seems like it's falling short a bit. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, I suppose all we're getting really is the TV coverage, um, and WST's coverage, which is obviously all going to be more promotional than journalistic. I did do a couple of Zooms during it. They were offering players up for Zooms. I spoke to Sean Murphy, and he was very honest after he won his game against Tepchire about where he views this tournament compared to the other three majors. If we're talking in terms of four majors, he says it's the other three are head and shoulders above that one. But yeah, no, yeah, of course you're going to get different angles and coverage by journalists being there. But no, from my place, difficult to get them to send me anywhere outside of Sheffield. So Saudi is a push, but you never know, might happen one day.
And I'm afraid the way the business is going, only had that conversation with journalists in the last few days. People are going to less and less across the board. Never mind the Saudi snooker, far more important events people aren't going to. But that's another thing about our business. Phil, Saudi will leave, shall we? It was a big tournament, and we got another one coming up in Wuhan, the Wuhan Open. It's beginning on Sunday. Let's run through some of the matches there. Ronnie O'Sullivan's got Alan Taylor in that tournament. We're expecting Ronnie to play, aren't we? No reason maybe not to. He's playing everything at the moment. I'm seeing you sort of nodding away there. I would hope so. Mark Selby's got Michael Holt, their first meeting at the 2002 UK Championship. A couple more I noted down that I really like the look of: Jack Lisowski, Ryan Day, and Jackson Page, Ali Carter. Ali's been terrific so far this season, actually. Yeah. Xiao Xing Julian Boyko. That's a big old test for Boyko against the world champion. Kyron Wilson against Aaron Hill, another big test there for Aaron, who joined us earlier this summer on the podcast. Neil Robertson and Rhiann Evans. And have a go at Jimmy White, Marco Fu, Phil. First meeting. It's not going to be easy. Have a stab.
I've looked it up.
You
I've
have?
looked it up.
You know like what?
I was hoping it was going to be a lot further ago, but it's still
Yeah.
25 years. 2000 was the answer, isn't it?
It is, and it's the Masters, wasn't it? And it was White beating Fu 6-3 in the wild card round. I like the venue because that pure yesteryear it was the old Wembley Conference Centre. But you're right, it could have been further than that. That's why I had the same sort of mindset. Looking forward to it. I mean, we're so lucky, aren't we? We talk about summer not traditionally feeling like a big sort of snooker season, but this is bang, 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 the third of the three really, and no reason for us to relish this one any less than sort of the ones that have come before, eh?
No, for sure. I mean, this has been a good addition to the calendar. The Wuhan Open came in straight after COVID, wasn't it? And that was quite funny that Wuhan was the first one back, but the new one after that. But
Yeah.
been a good addition. Great trophy as well, as far as I remember. But yeah, it's going to be early mornings. I think the first game's on that Sunday, start at 3 in the morning. So probably won't be watching all of them, but I'll be watching as much as I can from 7 o'clock onwards. I think you mentioned all the ones that caught my eye there. I don't know if you mentioned Joe O'Connor, Ben Williston, Leicester Derby. O'Connor's been so good this season.
Yeah.
And I spoke to him before Saudi, and I was sort of giving him the big one. I was speaking to some people at work saying, "Oh, Ronnie's in a bit of trouble ahead of this game," and he really didn't turn up, which was a shame. But I don't think that's going to take away from his upward trajectory in the game. And I don't know if you mentioned Mark Williams against Liam Davies there, a little derby in their club, so that'd be interesting. I think you ticked off all the other ones I'd seen there, but yeah, it's going to be a good one. 140 grand is the top one. So again, it's a big tournament. Obviously, things look small compared to Saudi, but this is a big one. We're very worth winning. And one thing I noticed when I was looking at the draw, um, top half looks a bit more favourable because Zhao Katong is going in as first seed as the defending champion. So look, there's some good players in there, but there's Kyron has a good chance. And there's Selby, Williams, Ding, and Hawkins, the real big hitters there. The bottom half, you've got Zintong, Ronnie, Judd, Robertson, Murphy, Higgins, Allen, Carter. I was pegged as like legit
God.
contenders, and that looks tough.
That's a nightmare.
So, there are some obviously very good players in that top half, but Kyron and Selby look like they stand out. Williams actually been playing as well, but I think at the four at the minute, you really think, well, five now, Robertson, Zingtong, Ronnie, Judd, Robertson, Kyron. Four of them are in the same half. So Kyron might prefer that bit of the draw, having
Well,
had a look.
absolutely. Yeah. Well, enjoy it, everyone. Live here in the UK on TNT Sports and Discovery Plus, and of course you can, look at WST for the broadcasting arrangements where you are. A big snooker story that's emerged since we were last on air a couple of weeks ago, Phil. This is copy here from the BBC. It's their story actually from Dan Rowan, the BBC sports editor, and Jamie Broughton, a good friend of ours, Radio 5 Live's snooker reporter. And the story is this: a new independent association for leading snooker players will give them, quotes unquote, a stronger voice and could be massive, quotes again, for the growth of the game, according to its chairman, John Higgins. The four-time world champion is the director of the Professional Snooker Players Association, the PSPA, which says it is launching to champion the sport. We feel as though we've not been listened to as we should have been in recent years, Higgins told BBC Sport. The game has not moved forward with the times compared to other top sports. Snooker deserves a strong independent players association that stands for fairness, transparency and progress. The association also claims the governance of snooker should factor in the views of the players, and it has vowed to foster a collaborative relationship with the sports authorities, including the WPBSA, the existing WPBSA Players Board and WST, to enhance the sport's future, more quotes here, while safeguarding player welfare and commercial interests. Now, I know you probably know this story by now, but if you haven't quite followed it, you'll be wondering, well, what are the names? This is important, isn't it? The PSPA says it established a Players Board comprising of Judd Trump, Kyron Wilson, Mark Selby, Barry Hawkins, Sean Murphy, Ali Carter, Gary Wilson, Stuart Bingham, Jack Lisowski, Stephen Maguire, Mark Allen, Ryan Day, and Joe Perry. Another player, Matthew Sell, has been appointed a director alongside lawyers Ben Rees and Mark Cancray. And the association also claims that Ronnie O'Sullivan has agreed to become a member, along with Chinese stars Ding Junhui and Xiao Gudong. Well, WST and WPSA both making the right noises. WST saying we always welcome and encourage dialogue with all 128 players on the tour. We endeavour to create the best possible opportunities for players to achieve success, and have significantly increased prize money in the last few years. We look forward to meeting with this new group and hearing their ideas in further developing the sport. The WPBSA said it has always welcomed player engagement in the sport, and that its chairman, Jason Ferguson, has reached out to John Higgins to reiterate its position in this regard. And the statement added, the WPBSA will continue to serve the sport in the interest of all its playing members. Well, it's reminding me of that Billy Bragg song, Phil. There is power in a union. And there clearly is, isn't there? We'll certainly watch developments with interest. My initial thoughts, Phil, I'll go over to you now, is that this, in a way, is the easy bit, isn't it, for players? In some regards, it might sound a bit cynical, but it's now about them sort of putting the actions into words type thing, getting together, working for the rights as players as they see them and the needs as they see them. And we've heard in the past, that players haven't always been that vocal when it's really come to the crunch of being at actual meetings with the WPBSA or any sort of official players meetings. Now they've obviously established this platform. It'll be interesting to see how far they take it, and whether that means for them more tournaments, more money, more chance to go off and do their own thing, maybe on WST's watch, whatever it means. The way I look at it is that players have seemed bruised, a lot of them for some time. And I use that word carefully. I don't think they've been particularly angry or furious with the game or any kind of bitterness, but I think they've been a bit bruised by a few things that have happened. They obviously want to do something about it. And, well, what's your view, Phil? We're going to watch this space with interest, aren't we?
Yeah, well, I think that's it at the minute. It's very, very interesting development. Obviously, the names involved make it like that. John Higgins leading it, huge name in the sport, and not one that you sort of have down as a chief rebel by any sense.
Yeah.
So that that made it interesting. His comments are interesting. It's the fact that they sort of the players board, the WPBSA players board, was set up relatively recently with the intention of doing this job of representing the players. They obviously feel that it's not worked as they would like it to, and they've clearly taken it seriously by getting this story out as they have and signing up these lawyers. But we won't know until something happens, until they make some requests or demands, or they react to something that happens en masse. We'll see, won't we? I've reached out to a few players, not got too many hard and fast answers about what the issues they're really looking for to be solved or to change or anything. But I'm sure those answers will come soon. Um, and yeah, like you said, what then the crunch will come if they don't get the answers they want. What happens then? We'll see. Um, but they've got some serious leverage with that group of names together. So it'll be interesting. I hope what they do is to for the benefit of the game and for the benefit of the whole core, if not beyond that. And it's not just for the top names we've heard there to do better themselves. I would want any changes to be of benefit to everyone. Um, and hopefully that's what their intention is. But yeah, we'll have to wait and see, won't we? But it's very, very interesting. And um, as you say, the reaction was good from World Snooker and WPLSA. Hopefully, it can be um, good dialogue that leads to positive change. That's the dream.
Yes, it is. Lots of wise words there for you. And well, we've been trying to sort of keep you around the hour mark. There's so much here. We've been away for a couple of weeks. I think people understand that it goes a bit longer. We're not long away from the hour mark there. We'll have one more pause for a name check. But first, to cut a couple more lines. And this is obviously a serious news line here. Again, this is copy from the BBC. Former world snooker champion Graham Dott is to stand trial charged with child sex abuse. The 48-year-old Scot is accused of lewd and libidinous behaviour towards two children between 1993 and 2010. Dott, who won the world title in 2006, has pled not guilty to the charges, and a trial has been scheduled for next year. And Phil, I also want to reflect, if that's okay, on the World Games. Now, uh, this is successful the way for China, actually. Zhao Guodong winning gold in the men's event and Bayu Liu in the women's event. Zhao beating Michael Georgiou 2-1. Michael representing Cyprus in the men's final, with Germany's Alexander Widow taking the bronze. And Bai, who is, of course, becoming such a prolific winner generally in the game, took gold in the women's event, which was played with six reds. She beat Thailand's Nurucha Furenfeld 2-0 in the final, while another player from Thailand, Ploy Chompu Lau Katfong, took the bronze medal. So congratulations to them. Interesting event, I think, the World Games. And obviously it took place at the same time as Saudi. Glory for China. We often say that in the game, but particular glory for China all the way. And, it's good for so that gospel phrase you use. Well, this feels like it is good for the gospel of snooker. We just obviously have that overriding wish that one day the gospel takes that huge extra step and we see it in the Olympic Games, eh?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's a big sacrifice that Zhao and Bai made, especially Zhao because contender for Saudi really, certainly to go deep. So he's turned down some big money and ranking points there, but he got the gold medal, got to stand on the top of the podium. Michael Giorgio's got a very interesting story, and he sort of went off tour, and you follow him on Instagram. He's all over the world in quite glamorous locations.
Is he? I
Might be a
didn't
good
know
guest
that.
on here one time actually. So see how his
Doing
how
what? Playing in stuff.
playing. Yeah, yeah. He's got
Oh.
jobs, or I think he coaches all over the place. He plays in things when he can. Yeah, he's sort of
Mm.
got Q will travel, and he gets all over the shop. So and he silver medal there. And yeah, Narucha from Full, I don't know how to pronounce that, but she's only 19, got to the final there. So another talent from Thailand emerging. But yeah, bye. Just a relentless winner on the women's tour at the minute. So yeah, congratulations to those guys.
Indeed, and we are getting towards the final part of this episode, and we should say once again, you are listening to the Talking Snooker podcast with Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf. Jan Verhaas has retired from refereeing. He says he will focus on his roles as an assessor and as a tournament director. He says it wasn't an easy decision to make, but he feels the time is right. It's partly down to a motorbike accident that Jan sadly was in 2 years ago. He says it still leaves him in physical discomfort. So he is stepping down from that job. He'll, of course, still be a very integral part of the game. And I would say, Phil, that Jan, who is now 58, is just about the best to ever don the gloves, really. You know, an outstanding job done over more than 3 decades. And all we can say is, like, congratulations to you, Jan. You've been a brilliant servant to snooker. I know you'll continue to be. And fans everywhere, you know, I've heard them. They said to me, he is always so approachable. And I've seen it myself at events a number of times. So, you know, well done. You know, hats off to you. And I thought, Phil, one of the best compliments I can pay to Jan is I don't think it's a statement that I can be in trouble for to say that some players have occasionally tried it on a bit with referees. They definitely have, I think. And they would tend to do it with certain referees, I think. They wouldn't do it a month of Sundays with Jan. In fact, they wouldn't do it in 100 months of Sundays because he had too much authority, too much gravitas. It was his domain. Everything about his approach and his manner told everyone present, I am in charge. You know, I say we've had some wonderful snooker referees over the years and decades, Phil. I'd say Jan is pretty much pound for pound the number one.
Yeah, and I've heard players say that he's the best, and they know they're the ones out there
Yeah.
being refereed by him, and that certainly comes across on the telly as well. Authoritative um, and respected, and no one's right 100% of the time, but you need to just give a clear and authoritative decision and end any discussion sometimes because um, there are some odd situations in snooker. It's an odd game where it is sometimes a matter of opinion where things were and stuff, but you need a forceful hand to say, "Look, it's there, and that's where it's staying." And if you hadn't said that, then everyone agreed and got on with the match. So yeah, brilliant career. 6 World Finals.
Oh, yeah.
Quite incredible, really. I think I will have read that before, but when I saw that when the announcement came, I was sort of taken aback. It's an unbelievable amount of World Championship finals.
Mm.
Um, yeah, he's done everything in the game, and yeah, he's not going away. He's doing other jobs. It's like when Paul Collier hung up the gloves. He's still around at tournaments, very much involved in the game, so people will still see him. But yeah, just a massive congratulations on as good a career as you could possibly have hoped for when he got into that. Sensational stuff.
Yeah, great way of summing it up. And you're right, to do one world final, we get the guys that are doing their first one. It's huge, isn't it? And to think you've done half a dozen to six is quite something. And yeah, you've just been absolutely brilliant. As you say, we'll still see him very much around on the scene.
I
And
forgot to mention actually, I know this story came up loads with this, A, because of Ronnie's 147s and because of Jan, but persuading Ronnie to pot that black to finish the
oh
147 when he
God,
wasn't going to
yeah,
do it. I don't know if anyone else could have done it. What other ref would have tried or would have been successful? That might have had to have been Jan.
that's so right. Do it for the fans, Ronnie. Do it, pot it. Yeah, no, great way of saying it. You're right. No, he's quite he's a great character as well. I mean, some people say great character, and it's sort of like a bit of a glib old phrase, but it's true in Jan's case. He is truly a great character of the sport and great person to have around. And just say thanks very much for being such a wonderful servant and just a wonderful referee. I like the way you say the players often, a lot of them said that, and they will know more than we bloody will. So they say he's the best, and that should be good enough for us. He's been marvellous. Phil, we have some sad news. to report as well, don't we, from the world of snooker? And that is that Geoff Foulds, former professional player and father of fellow former professional and now one of the sport's leading broadcasters, Neil Foulds, has died at the age of 85. Geoff Foulds enjoyed a strong amateur career. He won the London Championship on 6 occasions in the 1970s, and he turned professional in 1981. There was a couple, of famous father and son meetings in the 80s, including in the last 32 of the International Championship in 1986. Geoff losing to Neil after his victory in the previous round over Bill Werbeniuk. I had a look through, Geoff's results and tournament appearances in the 80s, and it really is a reminder of just a very special time in the game with so many memorable characters. After his decade as a professional, Geoff Foulds served on the WPBSA board as a director and for a period as a chairman. And when we use that phrase, proper snooker man, proper snooker person, it very clearly applies to Geoff Foulds. Neil says this: the whole family are heartbroken but touched by the support we have already received. My dad was the driving force behind all of us, and we are all immensely proud of him. My own life in snooker is solely down to him, with the guidance and advice only a loving father can give. WPBSA chairman Jason Ferguson said, "We are deeply saddened to learn of this news, and our thoughts are with Neil and the rest of the family at this time." So it's sad news, Phil. We obviously send our condolences to Neil, one of the truly great snooker people, and all the family. Clearly we lost someone who was part of the fabric of this sport.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, really sad news. He didn't reach the heights of the professional game, but even those amateur wins you talk about, then that would have taken some serious doing at that time. And then putting a huge amount of work over a lot of time in serving the sport after his playing days. So yeah, big figure, and it was before my time really. But I'm a real big fan of Neil as a broadcaster and a person, and just tremendously sad for him and the rest of the family. And best wishes to them. Hope they're doing all right, okay, in what is obviously a very sad time. And I'm sure the snooker community has rallied around them as they always do so very well. So yeah, best wishes to all the family there.
Indeed, condolences to the family and friends of Geoff Foulds, who has died at the age of 85. Phil, we're at the any other business stage now of this episode, and we've done about an hour looking at the clock, so that's just about right. I'm delighted to say that I'll again be writing snooker columns for Sporting Life this season. My first of those of this 25-26 campaign is on the site now as I reflect on the big beast delivering the goods in Saudi Arabia. I mentioned earlier Kati Hartinger. I thought she was brilliant value on Radio Snooker, so it'd be good to have you for company there if you haven't listened to that. And we're looking forward to Wuhan, obviously. So, please, again, if you want to talk about your analysis of Saudi, I'd love people to have a look at that. You've got lots of other stuff on there. You've spoken to Neil a fair bit, I should say. You've got quite a lot of Neil stuff. Great quotes from him, just talking a lot about how much it means to him. And Dave Hender's written a great piece about Neil as well, I should say as well, talking about, the journey he's been on. I've heard a few people say that. And it might have been Scott McCarter along with Kelly Barker, and they obviously, have their YouTube specials on the sport. And I've seen it in a few places, actually. It's easy to sometimes forget the Neil story. The job centre stuff, Des Kane, now I'm talking about people. I'm doing a lot of plugging here, I know, sorry, but Des Kane's written a good, but we've all written good pieces, Phil. We're all good in the snooker media. Des has written a really nice piece about Neil on the TNT Sports website when he's talking about an interview that Neil gave him years ago when he was in the job centre, and it was a big eye-opener. Some of the scenes, I've been in job centres in my life going back historically, and by their nature, there can be worrying places, and he saw some scenes in there. He was like, "Oh my God, is this what my life's going to be?" Before he really got properly into snooker. He's come from Australia, and he won't be afraid of telling you this himself at times. We know that, but he's just done marvellously. There was that run of constantly winning stuff. So maybe there's a nice way of sort of wrapping up. Talk about your work, but talk about just Neil. He's just we're big fans of Neil as well. He was marvelous on here. He's marvelous whenever he talks. He's great value.
Yeah, he's a great guy. one of the many unique characters in snooker. Yeah, it's an incredible story. I think he's right when he talks about how the players that come from abroad don't get enough credit. They get some credit, but it's so much harder. Um, Sort of less so now in the more the better internet age, as it were. But he said before when he came over and had to go to an internet cafe whenever he could to send a long email. There was no contact back home really because he couldn't afford the phone calls when he was earning no money playing snooker matches. So I think sometimes, which he's prone to, sometimes he's got a bit far with it. I think he said if the World Championship was in Australia, he would definitely have won loads. Which I don't think you could quite say that. But definitely breaking into the sport in the first instance is way harder coming from where he's come from. So he did brilliantly just to become a professional and stay on tour, but to reach the heights he has, um, superb. And it'd be interesting to see where he goes now. Yeah, yeah, those two or three pieces I did, which was a Zoom chat with Neil afterwards, which was me and Rob Moore from the Sun. He was speaking to, and I think it was Rob that mentioned the World Championship already, as someone was always going to. And I think you could see in Neil's faces, he was just like, yeah, that. He said, I'm not as obsessed as I have been in the past, but you could see the way he responded was like, yeah, I do need to do that. And it's hard to say when he's lacking belief because he always talks such a good game. But he did say this time like it had been a real low and the doubts had crept in. But he did feel he would feel very much back to his peak of the back of his powers after that. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes from here. He's certainly a force, and well, he's always a threat in anything he went in. But he'd just slipped down into that pack of players where you wouldn't be surprised if he won, but you also wouldn't be like, oh, it's probably going to be Robertson this week. He may well have just edged back into that bit where he used to hang around in, where it's like one of the three, four, or five big hot favourites and everything. And if he's there, then it's just a brilliant watch. Proper robotic, hypnotic stuff. And for Neil Robertson fans, that's great.
It is, and we're just set up so well, aren't we? I mean, I know we're prone to say that. We don't tend to not relish snooker seasons or bits of snooker seasons, but it feels like we're just set up so well already with all these top stars performing, so many big events coming up. It's brilliant. Well, maybe just a couple of other sporting matters. I know that you and other cricket lovers, and I'm not as close as I once was, but I absolutely love that series. India claiming the most dramatic of victories at the Oval for that's England-India series finishing level at 2-2. Premier League is back, of course, that big behemoth. And well, as for snooker, we are just looking forward to the Wuhan Open. And we should say, Phil, well, I think we're wrapping up our summer season next week by catching up with your views. We've got lots in, and we've had some of more of those emails about the tournaments you're going to. Still a chance to be part of that should you wish. Tweet us at Talking Snooker or email talkingsnooker@yahoo.com. And yeah, great to see you as ever, Phil. I say I was on my summer holidays. Thank you to the good people of Guernsey and St Malo. They're lovely places, they really are. But very, very pleasant indeed. Bit of swimming in the. I'm not a great swimmer in the sea, but even I relish to that a bit. It's a bit cold, frankly. Let's be clear. That's the problem with it. But it was very nice. And now it's all about getting back to snooker matters. And yeah, we can't wait, can we? Bit of snooker over cornflakes. What's the breakfast you normally name? It's cornflakes, isn't it? Or
I think I say cornflakes. I mean, I don't actually eat cornflakes. That's just my go-to reference. But yeah, no, I like those ones. It just suits me when working at home with the snooker on. And yeah, I mean, then it's just September. Then we're into September, and it's just packed. Or China and back, and then all the way up to the UK, and it's just busy, busy, busy. So yeah, time to get stuck in. And actually, that's what I was going to say when you're talking about those nice pieces that come afterwards. It is good sometimes you get a week off, or at least a few days off after a big tournament, because then you get those sort of more reflective, expansive pieces, that nice writing, and we get into this real meat of the season, which is it's good for the players, but it feels like there is barely a day off snooker for some months. And you're just sort of doing the reporting, the churn of the reporting. But it is nice when you get a few days, especially after a massive final like that, to sort of reflect on what it all means. And yeah, I think you're right. There was a number of good pieces cropping up across the snooker media landscape.
Exactly. Well, I salute you and say thank you. And I've always enjoy your company, as you know. I'll see you next time. We'll catch up with those views. And yeah, enjoy Wuhan. I know you'll be covering it brilliantly as you always do on social media and elsewhere. And we just look forward to it. I hadn't even thought about who. I don't really think about who wins these things, to be honest. I just enjoy watching them.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fair. Is it? They're such a nightmare to pick, even when a lot of them come out with big name winners, but picking which one, I mean, it's a minefield, isn't it? I'm very impressed when you see people tweeting their successful betting tips because I wouldn't be winning much money if I was doing that.
Oh God, those guys like our friend Richard Mann and those other ones. Yeah, they own their corn. It's tough gig. It really is. Well, all the best, everybody. Thank you as ever for your company. Well done to Neil Robertson, the winner in Saudi Arabia, and we'll return with your views next week. For now, from your old friends Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf. Cheerio.